Every time I open my phone, I'm hit with the attacks. The tweets are grenades, the news articles bullets, pouring from bottomless munition stores of relentless lies and deceit. This is the world that we live in, a world of our creation, a world lightless and barren, truthless and cruel, a world bent into misshaped by the will of someone or something. Which then begs the question, who do we hold accountable? Who would first be held in trial? First in line, first in contempt of the court? Our indicting fingers would no doubt point outwards and find the politicians, the core of all our problems, but our fingers would never point inward. Never would we consider our own guilt in such a crime. Are we truly that naive? Perhaps the people from the infamous 1950s had their lack of access and openness of speech, knowledge and truth to blame. But are we, while living in the age of the global village, able to offset our guilt in this mess of a society? We are guilty of silence. Systemic silence that seals us, seals our future, seals our fate and extinguishes our freedom. And the fault lies with us. We will never be brave enough to fuel the fire of truth. It sparks within us. All we have to do is see our fault in being bystanders. We must awaken the flame within our hearts by speaking out against the propaganda, the lies and the corruption. But instead, we blow the flame out. As a stranger within this new age, I've had to contend with the respective challenges and difficulties. And yet, as I attempt to garner some form of understanding on who and what institutions and people govern our world, a veil falls over my eyes like no other. We live in a world of distractions and misdirections. Shadows, layers of ignorance, arrogance, and megalomania blanket the light of truth. The moral compass to reference as we make decisions is absent, our morality aimless and corrupted by the influence of bias and propaganda. In the capitalistic 21st century world, we become a non-disruptive audience that only claps when told and romanticizes those on stage, the mass heroes that save us from the supposed enemy across the oceans. That is what we are taught. That is what we are supposed to believe. To say otherwise would be to admit that we are preyed upon from within. Over the table, the commodity is peace, but beneath it are dealings tainted with careful violence. Look no further than the veteran correspondent for Al Jazeera, Shireen Abu Akleh, who had covered countless Israeli operations in a career spanning decades, and yet was shot dead whilst attempting to shed light on the tragic conditions of Palestinians in their own country. Do you truly believe she was caught in the crossfire? Really? Or was she sniped down, gunned in cold preparation by an Israeli soldier? It may seem that these demagogues choose diplomacy to go about their fear-mongering, but when threatened by the fourth estate, they become frenzied dogs, viciously scrambling to hide the truth regardless of the cost in blood. Because any price is reasonable to snuff out a lamplighter, a journalist struggling to light the way for us in a world of darkness. Now, whilst we may seem far removed from this in our Western society, it may come as a shock that from our own doorstep, journalists echo similar words. More than 720 signatory journalists cried out, the government should no longer prioritize the same discredited spokespeople and tired narratives they shouted. Respect the rights of journalists and media workers to publicly and openly express personal solidarity, they screamed. And the words echoed in an empty well and fell on deaf ears. We see the spark being extinguished by those in power before it can even kindle into a flame. But we remain ignorant bystanders that lack enough conviction to prefer truth over oblivion, that even when called to uphold the truth through opinion, through mere thought, we fail. Think of Trump's cult politics, the way he exploited and from seemingly thin air conjured a formidable fan base of voters that blindly signed ballots without question. America is a cultivated petri dish in which we can see in real time the true nature of the world, our world. They were presented with a choice, as Orwell puts it. The choice for mankind lay between freedom and happiness, and for the great bulk of mankind, happiness was better. We are all human, and it is we that are willing to forfeit our critical faculties to enjoy the safety of living in ignorance. After all, ignorance is bliss. And yes, some names will spring to the naive mind. This politician is great, you'll say to me. This politician has done so and so, has preached such and such. The world isn't all that bad, see? The road that politicians take, good-natured or selfish, is paved by us. Our votes are our strength. Our weight is in our opinions. But what power does the common man really have under the boot of unwavering demagoguery? Does our singular power not pale in comparison? Your small flame does not burn alone. It can burn together in a bonfire of thousands. The Bolshevik Revolution was the story of the working man, the peasant, and a dream. But what came off was a unity that could not be impaled by the pollution of compelling propaganda. What then followed was a near bloodless toppling of a decades-long regime, sending power trickling right down the hierarchy, lower and lower, feeding the conflagration of truth. That is the kind of fire that can burn, if we fuel it together, a flame of truth. Will you live blinding yourself, hands over ears, reciting a mantra to keep responsibility away? Or will your sight be steel and your hands unwavering as you shield the flame of truth? The call to rise is a universal constant, passed as a torch from one revolutionary to the next journalist, through me to you. At worst, you may not heed my warning, forget my words, bury them once again. But maybe one fist will rise in dissent, and where there is smoke, there shall smolder a fire born in you. Let this fire of truth burn and spread. No longer will we see ourselves divested of power under a system of illusion and the thumb of willing misguiders. We hold the world on our shoulders like Atlas, caving ever so slowly. And with enough will, together, one and all, we can upturn this world and remake it in the image of truth.